Hello. Thank you for choosing WebMD's brand new video podcast, bringing clarity to life and business decisions. A mini-series where we talk to entrepreneurs and business owners about conventional and unconventional ways to up-level success in both their personal and professional lives. Welcome to episode 2. In this episode, we will be exploring the power of mindfulness in leadership and company culture with Jordan Benjamin. Now, Jordan is a pre-IPO HubSpot sales wizard and peak performance coach for SaaS sales teams. So, needless to say, he is a well-known and brilliant sales leader in the digital marketing space. But before that, like Carson in episode 1, Jordan went on a pilgrimage of his own, becoming deeply invested in the practices of yoga and mindfulness meditation. Because of this foundation in mindfulness that he cultivated, when Jordan's career in startup sales started to take off, he was able to infuse components of wellness to help manage the stress and burnout of his field, and in the process became a well-known voice on the subject of mindfulness and sales leadership. We hope you enjoy this episode. As always, make sure to register for episode 3. Details are coming soon, and share us with a friend. Welcome to episode 2, The Power of Mindfulness in Leadership and Company Culture. I am here today with Jordan, Principal Partner Sales Manager at HubSpot and founder of MyCoreOS, and of course, our own CEO at WebMD, Matan Danino. Welcome you two. Thanks for coming to episode 2.
Hey guys. Hello.
Good morning.
Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. All right. So Jordan, I've already started to give the listeners a little bit of a Cliff's Note version of who you are, but I'd love to have you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your spiritual background and how your philosophy around mindfulness and your gratitude practice, things like that, how in your personal life it has impacted your professional approach and your growth professionally over time.
Yeah, it's a long story, so I'll try and keep it short. But I think for me, I grew up outside of Boulder, Colorado. So maybe that tells some people that know the area enough of why I might be open to some things that historically have been thought about as a little bit more woo-woo or Eastern philosophies. But for me, I actually got into yoga. My freshman year of college, a girl that I was friends with finally dragged me along to a class. And I just had a massive realization there that so much of what I'd been taught in school or learned through falling on my face throughout my life, there was way more to it than I'd ever known or acknowledged or been taught. And so that got me on this path where another friend introduced me to meditation, and I started exploring. I got really deep into yoga, became a yoga instructor, and really started exploring more pieces and components around the power of the mind that were not what was taught to us in our school system, because most of Western schooling tells you what to think and not how to think or how to explore for yourself. And so it led me on this path of exploration to think about, well, I have no idea whether I'm going to like that book or not unless I read it. So I started reading tons of books, attending different conferences and seminars, and taking additional trainings, courses from MIT to courses from Sounds True, and one that I'm wrapping up right now called the Inner MBA, where there's different faculty and professors, where now a lot of this woo-woo stuff is getting science backed up behind it to show that, well, yeah, people that meditate, actually you find a lower stress response, or they can be more effective in stressful situations. And that's why folks like the Navy SEALs also use things like meditation to help them drive and perform in really tough and stressful situations. And so that's what's helped me start bringing that more into how I work, how I sell, and how I lead, to not only just be working and then a totally different person, but allowing me to really integrate both of those kind of parts of myself through both work and life. So it's not this really tense struggle between the both of them.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. And it definitely makes sense. You can't compartmentalize the different versions of you and expect to show up as your best self at either one. That's awesome. So Matan, we know that you incorporate breathing exercises in your everyday or your week to week. Are there other habits or rituals or practices that you've researched and taken on for yourself that, you find helps or has helped in your professional success over time?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know we spoke in the first episode with Carson about breathing. That's something I recently incorporated. Definitely have found the benefits in that, even these small time blocks in my calendar to actually step away, sit down. I have a small couch here and just do a couple breathing exercises. I noticed time blocks in my calendar, period, are the way I like to operate. And I force those blocks even personally. In the morning, I have blocks for working out or for breakfast or remember to drink water. And those things, again, just allow me to show up when I do need to show up during a standard sort of, 9 to 6 day or what have you. By doing those other components, though, I'm blocking out time for what I would call personal or forcing lunch. If I don't do lunch, I'll get booked up and now I don't eat. Then the afternoon's off completely. So for me, I definitely am big on time blocks. Exercise has been another big one. I used to work out after work, sometimes on the weekends. Again, life happens. All of a sudden, it's only 1-2 days a week, but I force it now. 3 or 4 days a week. I'm in there mostly in the morning hours before work, then a shower, and then you step in and you already have a jump start on the day. It's huge for me. I think exercise, a lot of people, talk about that, but I definitely seen a benefit, not just physically, of course, but a benefit in the way that I show up and am prepared to sort of tackle the day mentally. I feel very clear by the time I've worked out, showered, eaten something, a couple, bottles of water already down. I mean, there's no doubt. The other thing I also find balance in is having outlets outside of work that allow you to sort of keep focused on what you're doing. But when you have another outlet that you can sort of dedicate a passion to, or some type of a drive, if you will, or an endeavor that's just for yourself, you feel accomplished there. And then you show up at work even more so ready to sort of tackle the day and tackle the challenges. So for me, I'm training, I'm going for my private pilot's license, hopefully a couple months out from achieving that. It's been over a year and quite the challenge, quite frankly. Work has its own challenges, but this one was a new material, new concepts, and it's been pretty difficult. But I feel great, about kind of being on the tail end of that, hopefully achieving that soon. And again, just all those little wins outside of work allow you to show up sort of professionally at my best. So it keeps my mind kind of really grounded, I guess is the best way to put it, and very focused.
Yeah. I mean, talk about getting clarity. You have to go all the way up to the sky to get it. That's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it.
I just want to chime in that I think there's so much goodness that comes from, one, taking care of those foundational things like you're talking about, drinking water, eating the right food. It's crazy how much, again, we've been taught to eat things that are pretty terrible for us as a whole. And then that part of like going for a pilot's license, like what we start seeing now from folks that are trying and testing new things, getting outside of their comfort zone, is that helps build neuroplasticity within the brain that is going to help develop new neural pathways, new neural networks for you to operate. So as you run into a challenging situation in the future, well, now you've actually got more opportunity from the way that you've programmed and trained your brain to say, I'm okay exploring and testing new things that I haven't actually done before.
Sure.
So there's some really cool science coming out behind that around how trying to learn a new skill, learn a language, learn a musical instrument is so powerful for our brain in the short term. And as we think about aging and getting older in the long term as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy how when we're younger, that's literally our default is to try something new, to learn something new. And as we get older, it just falls away. And that's probably when we need it the most so that we can think about things from different angles. It's very interesting. So Jordan, you have a coaching company called My Core OS that focuses on leadership skills for SaaS sales teams. I noticed one of your offerings focuses quite a bit on mindfulness as it relates to being more self-aware as a leader. So can you give insight on how developing deeper self-awareness can help professionals lead more effectively?
Yeah. And so this is one of those things that I never expected to get when I started getting into mindfulness, but my dad used to always give me this framework that was taught to him by a leadership coach that starts with, number one, it's all around how do you help others and how do you show up your best for others, but it starts with know yourself. And by actually starting to understand with some quiet time or journaling or so many other ways that you can get there, but starting to understand what are those thoughts that come up in your head? What are those negative thoughts that come up? What are those fears that you have or challenges that we all have going through our minds? Even though, again, when I was younger, if I would have told somebody like, oh, there's like chatter going on in my head, I'd think, oh, you've got like a medical disease, like you've got a problem. And it's like, no, we all have this voice that's going in our back of our minds. But by first knowing and understanding what that is, I can then start to take control. I can say, oh, you know what? I get really nervous when I speak in public. Okay, well, now I can start to control myself, which is step 2. So know yourself first, and then you can control yourself, because then we can actually start to empathize with other people to step 3, which is understand others. And then we can do something for others. And so for me, the foundation of leadership is building self-awareness, because we all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. We all have good stories in our head, and we all have some not so good stories, and probably have things going through our head that we wouldn't ever say to somebody else, but we'll talk down to ourselves in that way. And so I really love this kind of 4 parts to say, know yourself, control yourself, understand others, and do something for others, because then we can actually lead. And I think the foundation is just having some quiet time with yourself to reflect on, who am I? What am I thinking about? What am I afraid of? Where do I want to go? What is maybe my purpose? And how do I actually start creating stories in my head that are more empowering, more invigorating, and more intriguing to me than the ones that maybe like, yeah, I'm showing up to work to punch a clock today, to punch the clock, to, oh my gosh, I have this incredible opportunity to go out and help hundreds of people run a better, more efficient business. I have the opportunity to help thousands of people manage stress or anxiety, that you never know how that could show up in other parts of their life. And yet most of us have just been on autopilot with our pre-programmed operating system from school, family, and what we've seen. So really working with folks to take control of that and understanding what is meaningful and what is relevant for you personally is where I think it all has to start.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely makes sense when you, especially how powerful your thoughts are. If you talk to your, what is the thing where you, if you talked to little you, like you talk to yourself now, like, can you picture that? Would you say those things to your little self? So why would you put those thoughts in your head now, especially when there's like financial ramifications and success ramifications? It's pretty crazy. And I know I keep making these ties to like your younger self and when we're younger, but I feel like leadership often has those similar ties as being a parent in this way. You know, you need to get your head right to be able to give your best to your kids, or in this case, your team. So now I want to transition away from that betterment of self that we've sort of focused on thus far, and sort of translate and see how that translates for business owners and entrepreneurs and how they show up for their teams. Sure. I feel like this question is especially prevalent this year as we find ourselves coming back to business as usual, if we can ever go back to that. But Jordan, what do you think is the most important thing leaders need to understand when it comes to supporting their team today? Not heavy at all.
For me, I think we could spend an entire day on this topic. But for me, I think what's really critical is it comes out of this know yourself, because then you can start asking and talking to others on your team, you know, whether you're remote, whether you're in person. You know, I think what we saw transition is you could see if somebody was having a bad day or if they were frazzled or stressed when they were coming into the office. You know, they're coming frantic, you'd see them moping at their desk. And as a leader, you don't get a chance to see as much of that anymore. And so what I love to run with teams is a little check-in session to say, one, how are you feeling today? Different than how are you doing? How are you doing? You get good, fine, okay. How are you feeling? A lot of people still default to good, fine, or okay.
Yeah.
But then you can say like, well, how about we use an emotional word? Joyful, energized, tired, depressed, stressed, sad. Because again, that builds the self-awareness for the individual that usually, again, we're not stopping to take that time. And so whether we do a team meeting or we do one-on-ones, I love to have a little bit of time just to, how are you feeling today? Yeah. And then if we have it around a team, maybe it's, you know, what's one thing you're proud of in the last week? What's one thing that you're really appreciative of? And by doing that, we can start to build this emotional intelligence as a leader to understand not everybody is showing up from the exact same place every single day. Yeah. We are humans. And I think that is the biggest part for other leaders to realize is acknowledge, yep, I've got things that I've screwed up in my life. I've got, I'm okay being vulnerable with my team when, hey, you know what? Yeah, I just found out I've got my kid's graduation today, and I've got this other thing that came up, and like it's snowing, and I've got a team member right now who said somebody ran into a power line outside his house, and the power's out at their house. And by being able to understand that we are all humans and we have different things going in our lives, and you don't have to be a therapist, you don't have to be, a psychiatrist or anything of the sort, but to just acknowledge and understand that, hey, how are you feeling today? What are you working on? What's something you're proud of? How can we celebrate some good things? Helps us actually understand how is our team showing up, and what can we do to help pivot or move ourselves in a way to actually align with them better, because we are humans, we are not robots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Matan, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I like the human element for sure. I mean, obviously, I run the team here, and it's a small team, and I need people to feel open in sort of the communication, removing the barriers of what typically exists, I think, in like a corporate setting, where I think there's a little bit of fear sometimes with, you don't want to ask something you don't know, you don't want to bring up something to your manager or the vice president or the leadership teams. There's a little bit of fear there, maybe it'll backfire, maybe get in trouble, maybe you even lose your job. I try to remove those barriers. I really create an open format. I think, again, you could sort of echo this, but I think create an open format for people to feel that they can speak to me about stuff, that that I'm willing to take feedback, both constructive and not, but to bring up things that can better the business, and therefore I turn that back and better the team. Like that, these are huge things. I think that opens up a format of honesty, and people just feel comfortable in the work setting. And I think when you feel that way, you show up your best. Yeah. And when you don't, you're always in this sort of, uncomfortable position. And I would argue even starting to cut corners, and you sort of, you start seeing that. And I typically see that in environments where it's very hard to control that. I think with COVID as well, and everyone being remote as we are now, I think that the sort of element of being together in a group and having a human touch and just sort of, side conversations, some of that's been lost, but we have to try to continue to bring together the fact that let's all just realize, like Jordan's saying, that we're human beings, that we're all trying to perform and better our lives and our careers and even our personal life. And a lot of that's fueled by your work. Your work is a big part of your life. And so having those sort of, that format where people can speak and sort of rise up together, I think that's quite strong.
Absolutely. So I heard a term recently that I like a lot more than work-life balance, work-life harmony. And I think I heard it reading or listening to one of your podcasts there, Jordan. But I love the word harmony instead of balance, because in my experience working at various remote agencies, especially during the unknown of the first few years of the pandemic, harmony didn't even feel like it would have been in existence. It was more of like a push and pull. And, I wanted to push and just keep working the way I'd always been working, but my psychological health pulled a lot more attention. I had just had a baby. I just started a new job at a new agency. I felt really guilty about taking time for me, or constantly feeling like I was giving a B effort in every area of my life. So speaking from the perspective of the employee, what are some ways, and Jordan, you can answer this first, what are some ways leaders can meet employees where they are at to help them feel safe enough to define what work and life harmony is for them, and to also feel successful and motivated in their career and at their place of business?
Yeah, this is so fun. I love that term. For me, it was like work-life integration, but harmony just sounds so much more delightful than even integration. I love to find that balance and that flow in, how do you work, how do you live, and bringing them together. And I think leaders, this stuff is so easy to do, but we're so much more focused on how do we just get into the business objective first and foremost in every single meeting that we have. And for me, the easiest way is to carve out 5 minutes, maybe ask 1 or 2 questions at the start of a meeting, of a one-on-one, as you get a team together, as you bring new team members on, asking, well, what are some goals? What are things that you want to work on? What's some important stuff to you? great. Work stuff is great. I want to, have this percentage attainment. I want to do President's Club. Like all those things are wonderful and should probably be part of that conversation. But if that's all you get from your team, see, like, well, what's one thing you're working on outside of work? Like Matan was talking about before. How do you actually model like, yeah, you know what? I feel like I should be able to take feedback too. Do you have feedback for me? But, it's like, oh, here's a goal that I'm working on, because a lot of people haven't actually thought about some of those things. Oh, I want to buy a new house. I want to take a vacation to South America and live in a camper van. Wow. And now you have ideally some information, depending upon size of your team, that you can store in your head, or maybe you should write it down, names of their kids, birthdays, all sorts of stuff that, again, just humanizes the employee. But I love going with, what's the goal, or what's it, something that you're hoping to accomplish in the next month or two that helps you understand what are those pieces that give this person purpose that goes beyond just a sales number or a revenue metric or whatever else it could be that's set by the business.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it for business owners that might be listening to that thinking like, well, we don't have the time, or, or maybe it just feels like more of a struggle to add that personal touch. I feel like even taking it back to if you give interest in their personal hobbies or their personal endeavors, like you said, those are building new neural pathways that make them more diverse in their thinking for your job too. So in a sense, caring about what they care about will make your business better, So I think that that's fascinating how it all seemingly personal and professional life are supposed to be so separate, but it all impacts each other and makes for a more successful and safer climate. Matan, do you have any other, I know you talked a lot about open, honest communication. Is there anything like team get-togethers or check-ins that you do that make, that kind of build that level of trust for your team?
Yeah. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah.
I will say, look, I think what's happened now is culture has become huge, right? And especially as we think about young professionals, true professionals, but young professionals, the blend of culture and sort of professional life, like you guys were just talking about, is really one element. And if people don't like culturally where they work, they're willing to give up that job at the expense of more money. It doesn't matter. I don't like working here. I'm going to go find something I like, and they'll do it for less. It's very interesting. And I don't think that's going anywhere. I mean, the idea of having a good cultural fit in what you do professionally, and Jordan, is at HubSpot, and also, with his own business, like he has to like working there. And so I feel that that's an element that every business now is incorporating, whether they like it or not. And if they're not doing it, they're being left behind, and people are leaving them and going elsewhere. So you become sort of a disadvantage. I will say, as far as being open with the team and communicating, like you mentioned, I like to always do that. I have biweekly meetings, right, as like team meetings where I'm holding them, giving updates that most folks probably would not give, sort of like as you think about CEO or leadership. I'm talking business, sales, prospecting. If we're losing a client, we're always talking about why we lost the client. Not so much to call out folks, but more so like, what could we have done better? Let's see how we view it from the client's perspective. I mean, all these are growth opportunities to just become stronger. And I also give updates, like I said, for good or for worse. But when we think about new business opportunities, I want to bring the team in also to kind of co-vet that, so that when we go into a deal, people are excited about working with this prospect or what end up becoming a client. And I think when we feel that, the energy that comes through, whether it's on a Zoom meeting or otherwise, people feel that, and they want to work with folks that align with them as far as how their mind works, how they operate. And say, you know what, these folks are all right. They're like me, or they think like me. They are like, and for that reason, you have a good business relationship. And I'm seeing that more than ever. The clients that we love, the clients that we keep, I think they love us back just as much. And of course, we have the proof's in the pudding, right? We're still a performance sort of marketing and sales agency, but at the same time, if they don't like us, they probably would have let us go a long time ago. So that element is huge to keep culture strong and keep people happy to be here.
Yeah, and I'm sure if having those conversations together with the entire team as a whole, it makes them feel, invested in how the business goes forward, because you're tackling it together. You're asking them for your input. So, and
I want it, and I genuinely want it. It's not, I don't want to make decisions that are for better or for worse. Like if somebody has feedback, they say, you know what, did you consider this? Maybe I didn't. And if that's the case, absolutely. Why would I not want that?
And I think this is where teams are performing so much better, when we can be in a comfortable place to have diverse thought, to say, I actually don't agree with that. There's always a balance to how do we get there. But I think this is what leaders that are building the best organizations and best teams, they have this element of psychological safety, is the term getting thrown around a lot, but where people can feel comfortable sharing ideas, even if they are not perfectly aligned, because I think that is where two heads are better than one, all these things that we've heard for a long time. But this command and control leader that just says, you only do what I say, how I say it, and there's no other feedback, is just so ineffective in today's business world. And people not only feel completely unvalued if they can't share their opinion, but they leave, because there are so many organizations where they can share an opinion, where they can be treated as a human with knowledge and skills and value and perspective to bring to the table. And so this is where I'm just such a big fan of creating that environment for anybody to bring in different thoughts and ideas, because diverse teams will perform better, and they perform better if people can actually share what they're thinking and their unique perspective and bring it to the table.
Yep, for sure.
Absolutely. So this transfers really well into my favorite part of each episode that we want to make sure to bake in, is those tactical and low lift tips that listeners can take away and implement right away. And I know you've just mentioned some great ones, but maybe if we completely spell them out, Jordan, what are a few tips you have for leaders that they can start to use right away to build this healthier culture that we've been talking about?
Yeah, so I'll go with that 4-step framework at the start, and I'll share a few other ideas. Know yourself, control yourself, understand others, do something for others. I think that is a great place to start. Maybe it's just a couple minutes in a day, writing down something in a journal. How am I feeling today? Maybe check in with yourself. Actually doing a check-in with your teammates. How are you feeling? What's one thing you're proud of? Matan was just talking about, doing a lost client analysis. Well, also, how can you ask your team, whether it's after a phone call, whether it's after a meeting, hey, what's something what went well? Or after a week, what went well? And what's something you want to improve on? Because that will help drive a growth mindset. It's not where did we screw up or what did we do wrong, but it's where do we have opportunity to improve? And I'm also just a big fan of gratitude. Sounds so goofy, but actually finding that what went well, what is actually something that you can appreciate in this moment. Most of us wake up in the morning and we instantly move to, crap, I got to get up and do all these other things. How can you find a minute before you go to bed and when you wake up to actually focus on the good stuff? Because that'll actually help train your brain more in that direction as well. So those are a bunch of different ideas and thoughts, and happy to talk more about any of them.
No, that's great. And honestly, the gratitude thing got me because I can't remember what I was reading, but it told one of the tips were to put an alarm on my phone. So every day, 3:45, it's usually when my kids are in the car with me, it says, tell me 3 things you're grateful for, and it goes off. And there have been a few times where I accidentally snooze it or we just bypass it. And at the end of the day, my 5-year-old son is like, what are we grateful for, Mom? And so it's crazy how that can rewire your brain to look for the good and how much that is needed in your day. I mean, I can be so grumpy when I'm driving my kids home, and the second that alarm goes off and my kids, they say they're grateful for each other as they're gratefuls, and it just makes you happier to think about things you're grateful for. So that I definitely resonated with that tip, Jordan.
Yeah, I love that.
I think what's important is a lot of folks wake up and, like Jordan's saying, think about what they have to get done and view that as a daunting sort of task. And the reality is, think about all that you've already created. And this is just part of the process, to create more. I mean, that should not be daunting at all. I mean, that's very exciting. And most of what you've already achieved, absolutely, you could be grateful for. That's easy. And then the little things that almost seemingly you don't think you have to be grateful for, now you start thinking about maybe some folks that don't even have those. And then those seem like way down on the list, but those are real things as well. I think all of this combined puts you in a mindset to show up, right? And then when you're there and you're ready to show up and perform, and people say, you know what, I feel, and people can feel that energy through this type of a format, or obviously in person. I mean, there's no doubt that there's a human element to that, and that drives business forward. And I've seen that you meet people. Think about people you meet in your personal life who just right away are like, you know what, that guy was all right. Or people you just don't care to see once again. It's mostly because of what that energy is and what they gave off. And maybe it's not even what came out of their mouth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Super interesting.
All right. So Jordan, where can listeners find you to learn more about you, your work, offerings you might have that could help them further?
Yeah, check me out. I have a podcast interviewing sales leaders on mindset, mental health, how they think about it, called Peak Performance Selling. You can find me on LinkedIn, Jordan, Jordan, Benjamin, Benjamin. And you can also check out mycoreos.com. All great places to find me.
And we will add those details.
His podcast is awesome. Tons of episodes with really powerful leaders. Mostly on the sales side, but ties in sort of this mindfulness aspect. It's fantastic. So certainly check that out.
Yeah, and definitely tune in for episode 3 because we are going to make Jordan stay for another episode. We'll be talking about the power of peak performance in sales. It's not one you're going to want to miss. But hey, thank you both so much for taking the time to talk about mindfulness and how we show up both in personal, professional practice, but also for better, healthier success for our teams. I definitely think that there are companies, leaders, employees that would love to hear this information today. So I appreciate you taking the time to speak to it.
Absolutely.
Happy to join.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you. All right, everyone. We will see you at episode 3. Until then, take care.